Good morning and welcome to another time to a session Rumination with Andrew. And we hope to have an interesting discussion on an important topical matter. Now, this morning, I would like to talk about the whole matter of censorship in just about everything, but particularly in the field of science, right? Since COVID-19, we have been seeing wide scale ramping up of censorship in the scientific realm. Now, this is not very good because yesterday I posted a video and it was taken down by YouTube immediately. Perhaps 30 minutes after posting the video, it was taken down. What is interesting is that, YouTube, because it goes through algorithms, when I was posting it, it has the process in which you need to post the video, and it goes through copyright laws and everything and puts a check. So it checked everything, including copyrights, privilege. And the fact of the matter is that I was very shocked after 30 minutes to see that I was sent an email that my video was taken down and that it would no longer be published because it went against established community rules and regulations. Now, what are these established rules and regulations that YouTube has set up? People are still asking that question. No one really knows what are the established rules and regulations. But, as we understand, it is their platform, right? So they make up their rules, even though it might not be clear what the rules and regulations are. In light of that, of course, I will have to be very careful with what I utter on this platform. It means, therefore, that our speech, from here on, will be controlled, right? And speech is restricted. And people talk about the fact that this is, yes, a private company and it can do whatever it deems. But remember now that we have to be careful walking down that road. Slavery also could be described as a private industry also, even though the government was also involved. The government is also involved in the private industries, right? Because, they get tax breaks and lots of other economic privileges to which you and I are not privy, right? So the fact of the matter is that they are beholden to the rules that govern the society, right? So if we were to argue that they can do whatever they want because they're private industries, I'm sure Americans and people who live in other societies during slavery, perhaps might have argued likewise, as we're hearing from Nikki Haley, that slavery, was about states' rights, right? The rights of the people, the rights of private industries to do whatever they want. I think that's what she was also implying, right? That the fact of the matter is that if private citizens decide that they want to run their business in a certain way, including the exploitation of labor, then they should be allowed to do so, particularly if they are, private industries and firms and corporations as we have them now. So slavery was a peculiar institution and it was practiced on a wide scale in America and around the world, in the Western world, that is. And we're talking about the transatlantic slave, because slavery has always existed long before Western societies came into being. But we're talking about the transatlantic slavery and slave trade. So the fact of the matter is that if we decide to ignore the importance of ensuring that these private industries and corporations, accede, right, and conform to the regulations and the laws that govern our society, then we are definitely going to be enslaved one of these days, right? So we have to make sure that we understand these facts, that we cannot just let these technological companies, right, these big techs, right, do whatever they want to do, right? They must be held to account. When people talk on these platforms, they are expressing their opinions, right? They're not necessarily expressing that this is what needs to be done. But that's a whole thing about freedom of expression, right? We have different people who might believe different things. For example, in the religious realm, I'm a Seventh-day Adventist, and I express my belief system is centered around Seventh-day Adventism. So, of course, I might say things that offend somebody who might deem him or herself to be Catholic or another denomination, but does not mean, therefore, that you should restrict my freedom of speech. Those who want to listen to the Seventh-day Adventist doctrines, let them listen to it. Those who want to listen to Catholic doctrines, let them listen to it. And so should be in all spheres of our lives, be it in the scientific realm, in the political realm, or also in the economic realm. That should be the standard of what we call liberal Western democracy, right? But we're seeing that there is a shift, and this shift has been accelerating since the pandemic of 2020. And I do not think it is going to turn back. I think that it is, as I just said, accelerating, right, at a fast pace. And it is coming a time when you and I are not going to be able to express anything that is on our minds unless it conforms to the diktats of our government and their private industries and firms. And as I've said on this channel before, I think that all of these entities, whether they are government entities or private entities, they're all merged, right? They work together, and they work together against us, right? So whether you're liberal or you're conservative, it doesn't matter. And I've often heard people say, oh, I was listening to my conservative friend and I had to agree with him, or I'm not a conservative, but I had to agree with him on that or her on that point. The fact of the matter is, it doesn't matter whether you're conservative or you are a liberal. They don't care about you or your philosophies. They're just selling some ideas to you, some philosophies to you, so that they can control you, right? What you should be aiming for is the truth. And if the truth is on the conservative side, then you believe it. If it is on the liberal side, then you believe it. If it is in the middle between the conservatives and the liberal, then you believe. Truth should be your end goal. Your ultimate goal should be understanding, arriving at a conclusion of what is truth. Stop going around and talking about you're liberal, you're Democrat, you're Republican, or what all these titles that you, because as far as they're concerned, they control you, right? And the majority of people, when you look at that, you wonder if we are programmable machines, right? They can't think outside the box, right? And I'm talking to people of many different, persuasions, and also who are, who practice different career pursuits, right? Lawyers and doctors and engineers. And the inability to think is something that is common amongst all of these people, right? I was talking to a lawyer the other day, and he was, putting forward an opinion, his opinion, of course, because, what I share with him is also my opinions. But, our opinions also need to be grounded in facts and truth, right? We need to be informed. We can't just say, I don't agree. You must be able to present compelling evidence to suggest that, right? Because that is what the people were, even free speech is all about. That the founding fathers expected that Americans would be properly educated, that they would be able to form intelligent opinions, right? Because it can be an opinion, but it means that it needs to be intelligent, because anybody can, forward an opinion. We have a brain, right? But is that opinion an intelligent opinion that is compelling, that is rooted in facts and truth? And there is a consistency in how you actually argue and present your opinion. For example, let's go back to the lawyer. He was telling me that, in discussing the whole situation with what is happening to Trump, the former president of the United States, he was suggesting that, the courts going after Trump, right, is going to protect the democracy in the United States. And, and he's asking me the simple question, like, don't you think that we should go after all criminals? Don't you think that, we should ensure that the law functions and deals with everybody in an equal manner? Of course I do. And I hope that we were living in that world. But the reality is that we're not living in that world, that the criminals are going after the criminals. And some are, suggesting that they are bigger criminals and the other one is smaller criminal. So at this time, we're seeing that they're telling us, or they're trying to persuade us that Trump is a bigger criminal. He's one of the big fish in the criminal world. But I dare to tell you that a lot of them who are going after him are bigger criminals, right? And this is what we have to understand, right? That I can't be a criminal and then I'm going after another criminal. And that is why Christ said to the Pharisees and, who wanted to have Mary stoned, that he who is without sin, let him cast the first stone. If I know that I'm a liar, right, and I practice deceit, and then I see someone else who does the same thing, and I want, oh yeah, let the law, run its course, and I begin to exaggerate situations about the other person, even though I know that I'm also a liar and a person who practices deceit, then that is not good. And it will not help society, because that is the height of hypocrisy. And in our political realm, what we're seeing every day is hypocrisy, double standards, one standard for you and a standard for another person. So we've got to be careful about, oh, I'm on this side, because this side will one day betray you, right? So always be on the side of the truth, because as I said yesterday, the truth is the truth. The truth cannot be changed, right? And the truth is what will set you free, all right? If you are not beholden to the truth, then you're a slave. It doesn't matter if you don't have shackles on your hands and feet, right? If you do not have a desire to understand and to know the truth, whether it's in the spiritual realm or the political realm or in the economic realm, whatever realm or sphere of life that might be, then you are a slave, right? And that is why we have to be properly informed. There are people who say, oh, don't talk to me about politics, right? Because, I don't believe in politics. You don't have to believe in politics, but politics is around you. And politics informs almost everything that you do, right? When you had to take that thing, I won't call the name, right, in 2021, it was because of politics. Your government told you you had to do it, right? So how are you going to say that you don't care about politics if you don't inform yourselves? And that is why many of you were confused, because you do not follow what is happening in that realm. Should you be political? No, there's a difference, right? Because I consider myself to be apolitical. But the fact of the matter is that I inform myself and am not siding with any of these people, right? Because I know that they're human beings and that for the most part, they will betray you at any given moment, right? Most of our politicians, unfortunately, and I would not just say politicians, even your friends, it's a human characteristic to betray, right? To betray trust and confidence. And that is why it's not good to have many friends, right? A few friends, two good friends are sufficient. You will have acquaintances and people with whom you interact, but one or two good friends are the ones that you should cling to, right? When you find yourselves having 6 and 7 and everybody's your friend, you find that you are living in a confused world, because all of them also have different ideologies. And you find yourself also impacted by them. Because whether we like it or not, the people with whom we associate, right, are going to influence our thought processes and what we say we believe in. And sometimes we find ourselves just riding with the wind, right? Because we're not anchored in a particular belief system, right? And it's time for us to wake up. Now, this morning, I just saw this, this Politico news item, and I thought to share it with you quickly, right? It wasn't a long article, so, so I will just open up, and I think it's here. And yeah, so the Politico had this headline: hydroxychloroquine could have caused 7,000 deaths during COVID, study says, right? So this is an article that the former US President Trump said, "What do you have to lose? Take it." So this is actually, once you see these news, you know that it's political, right? Because you understand that Trump is again trying to run for president, and they're trying to say now that, look at this. This is a drug that he himself actually recommended, not understanding that first, Trump is not a doctor, right? So he would have got his advice from a doctor or from doctors who were on his committee, right? Who he might have employed to assess what medications were efficacious or not efficacious, right? So he would have gotten that from. But as a president, he has also the right, based on what he has been informed about, to make a pronouncement, just like if you're going to a war. And they did say that the COVID-19 was a war. So, he is going to get, recommendations and briefings from the people that he has employed to give him such information. So the article says here, and it's written by Marie Eccles, right? It says nearly 17,000 people may have died after taking hydroxychloroquine during the first wave of COVID, according to a study by French researchers. The anti-malarial drug was prescribed to some patients hospitalized with COVID-19 during the first wave of the pandemic, despite the absence of evidence documenting its clinical benefits. The researchers point out in their paper published in the February issue of Biomedicine and Pharmacotherapy. Now, researchers have estimated that some 16,990 people in 6 countries, France, Belgium, Italy, Spain, Turkey, and the US, may have died as a result. Now, one of the things the first thing that struck me after reading this article, or the first few paragraphs of this article, is that there is no sort of evidence that they have presented to suggest that 17,000 people would have died because of taking this drug medication. I mean, there's absolutely none, bereft of any evidence, right? Any compelling evidence to suggest that. These are just some allegations, right? Anybody could go and say that, right? You need to show where you got that evidence to think that, the COVID-19, these people would have been saved had they not taken this drug, hydroxychloroquine. Now, that figure stems from a study. They're now giving you a study published by the Nature Scientific Journal in 2021, which reported an 11% increase in the mortality rate linked to its prescription against COVID-19 because of the potential adverse effects like heart rhythm disorders and its use instead of other effective treatments. Now, one of the things is that we have been also informed by other scientists that there was an overdose of the use of this medication. And I've also been informed by, people who work in the pharmaceutical industry, right? That by pharmacists, I have a friend who is a pharmacist. I won't call his name for the matter of, privacy, and you don't know who's listening. But the fact of the matter, I was told by him that sometimes with the mixture, right, of these medicine, and I think there was is it I can't remember the name of that medication that was mixed with the hydroxychloroquine, and that particular mixing or merging of these two medications were toxic, and therefore it allowed the patients to die. But I am convinced by the evidence that I've seen from other scientists that, you had, enormous overdose of the hydroxychloroquine. So let us say that they should get 400 milligrams, right? The doctors give them 800 milligrams, right? Double what they should get. And sometimes I understand it was triple, right? So that would have created health problems. And that is what we expect these investigative reporting to do, right? To show the other side and to ask questions and to inquire why that might be so. Because this is a drug that has been approved by the FDA for many years. And so far, we have not heard of thousands, hundreds of thousands of deaths. So how could it just cause the death in that small, window of time is something that, we need to investigate further, right? I think that is something that needs to be investigated further and not just simply be believed, as some of you are going to be inclined to believing, right? Researchers from universities in Lyon, France, and Quebec, Canada used that figure to analyze hospitalization data for COVID in each of the 6 countries, exposure to hydroxychloroquine, and the increase in the relative risk of death linked to the drug. In fact, they say the figure may be far higher given the study only concerns 6 countries from March to July 2020, when the drug was prescribed much more widely, right? Now, what is interesting to me is that during SARS, that's the SARS COVID, well, I'm not going to call it COVID, SARS, the outbreak of SARS in 2003, right? The first SARS-1, let's call it SARS-1. This was a drug that was used to cure, or to at least to put a dent in the number of deaths in China and the other countries that had that disease in 2003, okay, when we had the first outbreak of SARS. Now, why didn't we see a huge number of deaths? Because this was the primary drug, and I think that this was, used and extensively, right? So why didn't it cause the same number of deaths or even more, right? While it was being used in that time. So these are some of the questions that the scientists who are making these process stations, who are actually, giving us, these sort of so-called facts, need to tell us, right? Because as far as people are concerned, these are facts, right? To the person who does not like to think, right? And who is not reading from a wide swath of different, scientific data and opinions, right? And facts, as you'd like to say, will just simply read this newspaper article and say it's true, right? Because that is how we have been conditioned to think, and there is no form of independent thinking, right? And independent research, Now, hydroxychloroquine gained prominence partly due to French virologist Didier Raoult, who had headed the Mediterranean Infection Foundation Hospital, but was later removed amid growing controversy. Yeah, I remember this doctor very well when he was dismissed for saying that hydroxychloroquine was actually curing these patients. But he's not the only doctor, doctors after him, including Dr. Peter McCullough, because Dr. Peter McCullough in the United States is almost like the face of the use of hydroxychloroquine. But then again, they're going to say that Peter McCullough, Dr. Peter McCullough, is a conspiracy theorist, right? So he cannot be believed, right? You have to believe what comes from the other perspective, the other side, because Dr. Peter McCullough, was relieved of his job too because of his decision to have different protocols and to use, medications that he, from his clinical wisdom and his years of extensive clinical practice, thought could have been used to heal his patients, to cure his patients. So this is what I'm saying, that we have to be able to look at articles, be they scientific, religious, economic, or in any realm or in any sphere of our lives, and assess them from a critical perspective, right? We can't just say that these are facts and that we need to believe that this is so. And it is okay for them to write articles like these in their journals, right? But it is for us, it is our responsibility to read and to critically examine and to compare, right, our, understanding and some of the other articles that we might have read in other journals, whether they be conservative or liberal or whatever, right? And to see if everything adds up, right? Now, it is very important that you understand that if you're going to be an intelligent reader, and I'm very, very serious when I'm making this, statement, that you've got to read what the conservatives say and what the liberals say. And this is what makes reading very, very challenging to do in our times. We have to read almost everything, and it's impossible to read almost everything, right? Because once you could take up a newspaper and, they've always been biased, but they tended to give you the facts and then allowed you to, to form your own conclusions, right? Now we find that newspapers are telling us what to believe and saying that this is the perspective, this is what is truth, and you must believe it. And if you don't believe it, you're anti-intellectual, right? So we have got now to read more extensively and to read with an open mind, right? We can't come with preconceived, and that's the whole thing with even the church and the Bible. You can't go to the Bible having your preconceived understanding of what the Bible is all about. There are people who, when they read the Bible, they have their preconceived ideas, and when they finish reading it, it hasn't changed because they did not go to the Bible looking for information. They're going to the Bible to find and to cement their, unbelief in the Bible, right? And to say that, oh, it is not true what God has said, right? It's not true because of your limited perspective, right? It is that we have to also go to the newspapers, right? And we've got to go, and with an open mind, we have to go to reading them. We have to read them, rather, with an open mind, so that we can begin to ask questions and say, why? Why is this happening? Just like, with Claudine Gay, and I'm no Claudine Gay fan, right? But you'd ask question, why now? Why are they attacking her now? Why is it that she's now? For all these years, she has been in the academy and she was not castigated, right? As a plagiarizer. But as soon as she made her pronouncements that the establishment wasn't in disagreement with, they decided that they would, say that she's a plagiarizer. And it's interesting to note that I was reading an article that many of her, in the New York Times too, that many of her supporters, withdrew from her, right? So some of you have people who you think are supporting you, especially if you're taking unprincipled stance, right? And you think they're supporting you until they begin to withdraw from you. So the best thing to always do, I would suggest, is always stick with the truth. and stand for unadulterated principles, right? Make sure that you stand for your principles, right? And be unwavering, right? Be unshaking, that if you have to walk, you can walk with your head held high. Thank you so much for joining. I look forward to seeing you in another video. Have a beautiful day.